Normally we record in the afternoon, and I'm worn out from the day, and so I'm not as lively.
But now we're recording in the morning, and you're still worn out from the day?
I didn't sleep good.
So you're worn out from the night.
Worn out from the night. So we need probably some extra pre-shows in here to really get going.
That's always the answer. Not that big coffee in front of you, but just more pre-shows.
Yeah, no, that's the whole point of the pre-show. Is it's the warm-up phase.
Yep.
You can't just go out there and just start running a marathon. You gotta do the warm-up. You gotta stretch. You gotta get those muscles woken up. I mean, if you just jump straight into it, you start just trying to sprint, you're gonna pull muscle.
Bad news.
I don't want to pull a proverbial podcast muscle.
Yeah, not a good idea.
We've all seen it happen. No, don't press that button. No, we're not there, Daniel. You haven't even looked. Jeez, come on.
Trying to get you moving.
No, I'm moving. I don't remember why I wanted to talk about this specifically, but
yeah, I'm looking at this topic. I'm not sure we want to really talk about this, but
have you ever gotten into a situation where, like, I'm sure you've gotten a blister on your foot?
Sure.
I switched running shoes and I got blisters on my feet and it was bad. It wasn't bad. It was fine. But what I've learned recently is that with all the training, I have have you ever gotten a blister with a callus over it so that you didn't even know you had the blister?
No, I don't think that's happened.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, that's just a callus. No, there's a blister under there, and you just don't even know that it's there.
The surface.
Yeah, just no idea. It's like they just stack on top of each other. Blisters on calluses on blisters on calluses.
Man, I feel like you could metaphorically apply that to a lot of things in life.
I'm not going to, though. Okay. I just think that when all this is said and done, I'm going to need a pedicure.
That's how you're going to treat yourself after your marathon?
Yeah.
You're not going to eat a big, you're not doing like triple dipper from Chili's, that sort of celebration. You're just going to go get a pedicure.
Yeah.
Good plan.
That's what I'll do.
Yeah.
It's probably better for me that way.
It's healthier at least.
Yeah.
But that triple dipper is pretty good.
Y'all, there's all kinds of ways you can spend those calories.
That's true.
I think
how many calories do you burn in a marathon, you think?
I don't know. For me, according to my Garmin, I do 2,700 calories for 20 miles.
And the marathon's going to be 26. That's going to be a little bit farther.
Smash Run thinks that it's 3,500 calories, but Smash Run doesn't know how tall I am or how much I weigh. So,
well, you're taller than the average person.
Well, that would mean I would expend more calories.
Does it though? Because it would also mean your stride length is.
Yeah, but we're including steps per minute and that sort of thing. I think weight maybe comes into it more.
I see.
Regardless, it's probably in the order of 3,500 to 4,000 calories.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, and you'll consume some during the race, with whatever like weird little gel things.
Yeah, I'm gonna do I'll probably do 800 calories during the race via like gels and that sort of thing. And then I'll do like 600 before, but I'll still be deficient by like a few thousand when things are done.
And you don't have to like carry water or anything during the race, right? Because they have all the stations.
They have stations like every mile, and I'm going to bring some water with me, and that more electrolytes. There'll be some sort of like Noon solution or Gatorade or whatever, and
makes sense.
I'll have that in my super cool running belt, my belly band.
Yeah. What's the weather supposed to be like? It's about what is it? 2 weeks away as of now.
Yeah, it's going to be like. I hope it's like it is right now today, which is sunny with a high of 75.
It's beautiful outside right now.
the first day of February. That's what I like about Texas.
Yes. It's very unpredictable though, because it was cold last week. I wouldn't be surprised if we had another, good cold snap.
Oh no, we're definitely right in the middle of fall spring.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's one more cold snap coming. It just needs to snap after the 16th.
Yeah, that's fair.
That big winter storm happened the week of Valentine's Day.
I think that's right.
Which is also the week of the marathon. So,
yeah. Well, if it snows that much, probably won't be doing the marathon. So I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I know that would be terrible.
Yep.
I'm not going to go just like run it on my own.
In the snow.
Yeah.
With snowshoes.
There's people who do that.
Oh,
They're like snowshoe marathoners.
No thanks.
Okay, Daniel. let's get into the actual pre-show here.
Okay.
We are going to go on a trip to Japan sometime in the future.
Man, we sound like YouTubers.
Yeah, we do. And not to get into too many of the details, but I want to know what we got to travel light, and I want to know what your camera plan is so far.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been thinking about what my camera plan is as well. I would like to take a camera because, it's like, how often are you going to go to a place like that?
Yeah, and you can't buy a camera in Japan.
They
don't have those there.
Who would do that? So I would prefer to take something more than just my phone, but I don't really have an answer yet. I have thought about a Ricoh GR3 because that seems, it's like pocketable and still get better image quality than the phone and all that. But the fact that it feels like there should be a GR4 this year, and so it's a little hard to buy a GR3.
It's also just hard to buy a GR3 in general.
And you can find them used, but the used price is like the same as the new price, which just doesn't feel good. So I don't know. That's one option. Another option would be the Lumix S9.
You've been shedding your travel camera stuff. Like you had the XT5 and you sold it to me. You still have the XT30.
Yeah.
But you got rid of your 27 millimeter
pancake.
pancake.
And I kind of want to sell the XT30.
Yeah.
And it's less, part of it is that I don't find myself using a travel camera much, but it's also just that I haven't been fully happy with that setup. And I would like to, I want to make room to get something, and I just don't know what. So the S9 is an option, but I would feel better about the S9 if I had any confidence whatsoever that Panasonic was actually going to release an S1H Mark II so that I could move to L mount.
Yeah. If you knew that you had a clear path into L mount, then buying the S9 is an easy choice.
Yeah, but I doubt we'll have that clarity by the time that trip happens.
Even still, though, the lens that you would get to pair off with an S9 is not necessarily a lens that you would frequently use with something like an S1H Mark II.
Yep, I have thought about that too. And actually, the S9 with the 20 to 60 lens is like $1,300 right now.
How big is that 20 to 60?
I don't know. I don't think it's a full pancake, but I thought it was a pretty small lens. And that's it's a really good price.
It is a small lens. It's a nice range too. It's 3.5. No, that's not.
The
3.5 to 5.6.
The aperture's not ideal, but I don't know. I don't know.
Isn't there a Sigma lens that's like kind of in that range? Just like a tiny Sigma zoom.
Tiny Sigma zoom. I wasn't aware of anything besides their APS-C 18 to 15.
Well, see, Daniel, what you have to do is you have to go back and listen to our episode after the S9 released, in which we discussed at length all of the lenses that I thought would be perfect for that camera.
That's true. We did have that. We did have that episode.
Like 10 of them.
Yeah. So I think the S9 is actually an option. And you're right. Like what I would pick for that camera is not really the same as what I would have on like my video primary camera. So not ruling that out. I did briefly consider the Osmo Pocket 3, do more of like a video centric thing.
Sure.
But I'm not a vlogger and it feels like a vlogger camera. So I don't think that's what I'm going to do.
Does Sigma make a compact 27 millimeter prime?
Like a pancake?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Not like a pancake. They have those compact primes that are not pancakes, but they're like
Pretty short.
1.9 inches long.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
they're
that
pretty
would be a
small.
good focal length, but I don't know.
I mean, well, not that you would get a prime, because zooms are just so versatile. If you had to shoot a prime, and only one prime in a trip like this, what would you pick?
It's so hard to pick. I mean, it's very hard to pick, but I think I would want, something full frame equivalent, something more in like the 40 millimeter or 50 millimeter type range, because I feel like if I want a wide shot, I do have my phone, and for wide stuff, like maybe you're not trying to like pixel peep it quite as much. Like a phone picture is probably going to be okay if you're getting like a big landscape or something. Whereas if I wanted to get like a cool up close shot of a person, my phone's just not going to do as good of a job on that. So I think I'd be more inclined to do that. And I think I just like tighter shots anyway.
So we're thinking you could get this 45 millimeter f2.8 L mount Sigma lens.
I mean, that's about the, that's about like the focal length and aperture I'd like to have. I just don't know how big or expensive that lens is.
It's like 215 grams, and it's in the range of like 46 millimeters long. However long that is in American units. I have no idea.
That's pretty short, actually.
Yeah, it's like I'm telling you, it's like 1.9 inches.
Yeah.
Just a little guy.
It's pretty short.
Look at brand new, $550.
That's totally reasonable.
I'm just saying.
I don't know. We'll see. I'm not ruling out the S9. I think it could be a good option for that trip.
But you're also not ruling out a GR3.
Yeah.
There's no way a GR4 is released in time.
Or buyable in that time might be the better metric. But
yeah.
What between those, or if there's a third option, what would you recommend I do?
I think that the S9 has a bigger future, and it leaves you with a second usable B camera when you get rid of the XT3.
Good point.
Not that you necessarily need like a B cam, but it is often nice to have. Mm-hmm. And the S9 has legitimately good video now, especially that they removed a lot of those record limits around the heat dissipation. Sure, you like your fight battery and that sort of thing, but it's like good enough that you would have decent video out of it, and it's so compact, and you can get it in colors.
That's true. I forgot about the colors.
I know, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's a possibility I do that, and even if most of the time when we shoot interviews we don't really need that additional camera, it's almost like because we do so much paid work, I like having a fallback camera that I could use. Like, we've planned to shoot an interview the next day, XH2S suddenly breaks. Like, I don't want to be totally up a creek.
Yeah. So what if in March, as rumors predict, Fuji releases this GX100 whatever point and shoot medium format camera?
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask you that question as I saw this on here, and my thought was you probably aren't buying a new camera for this trip, but I was wondering, is there a scenario where you would buy the medium format GFX camera? And for me, I think the answer to that's probably no, just because I think the price is probably gonna be way more than I'd want to pay, for this type of camera. But what about you? You think there's any scenario where you'd get something like that?
I could see a place for it in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that would ever actually buy it unless I made a big switch in my camera systems, where I was switching to something maybe like, this is my more professional type system. Like, okay,
you're becoming a Sony bro.
Yeah, I mean, like we're doing like way more photos, or like we've kind of expanded into different video stuff, and it would make sense to upgrade to full frame and like switch to Lumix or Nikon or Sony or whatever. And then in that case, maybe, sell a good chunk of my Fuji kit. I would like to keep like a carry around fun camera. And we talked about before that, like right now, my plan for Japan, my Japan plan, as you might say, is XT5 with the 23 1.4.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'm going to bring one prime lens and then just like let it happen.
And then realistically, you're probably going to buy a film camera while you're there.
Oh yeah. Like very strong chance that I buy a film camera while I'm there.
Because otherwise I would wonder, like, do you also take a film camera with you? But I think you'll just buy one while you're there.
I mean, I considered like also bringing the Pentax, but then now I'm like swapping between the two, and I think it would be more fun to just bring the one camera, like don't have to worry about trying to pick which camera I'm going to take what picture with. And then if a film camera happens to me while I'm there, it's even better.
Yeah. Yep.
So like that's my plan. And if that got swapped out with a medium format point and shoot, I'm not going to complain.
You'd be okay with that.
I'm okay with that. Yeah. I mean, it's like 100 megapixels, and that would be over the top. But I've always thought that, having a separate like point and shoot camera, I would want it to be different enough, which is why I've always wanted somebody to bring back the RX1R or whatever, because it's like, it's like the small compact full frame thing, and it's not just another APS-C camera. I have APS-C cameras. I want something different if I'm going to buy another camera.
Yeah.
And this GX100R, whatever they call it, that would be different enough. I mean, that's medium format.
Yeah. Do you have a concept of like how low would the price have to be for you to actually consider getting it? I
think the price is going to be probably in like the $3,500 range, and I can't, like, that would be ridiculous. If it was
a lot of money,
between $2,000 and $3,000, I could maybe convince myself.
Yeah,
maybe.
It'd be I would think it'd be hard to spend more on that camera than you've spent on like your primary camera.
Yeah, definitely.
So like you're using the XH2S. That was a $2,500 camera. I mean, obviously, things change over time. There's inflation. Hopefully you get raises at your job and stuff over time. So like, not saying that that's 2,500 is always the target, but it would be a weird feeling to be like, my like fun travel camera is $3,500 and my like professional work camera is $2,500.
Yeah, it's. I mean, talk to some Leica shooters, but I think it just kind of depends on if it comes along with like a bigger system change for me.
Yeah,
which I don't know.
I think that's a good. Probably a good like. That would be a good motivation to make that change because you like the Fuji film simulations and etc. But I could see long term if you start doing more like paid work or something, maybe you want to switch to Sony so you can get like a cinema camera or whatever.
Sure.
And
why are you trying to push me into Sony, Daniel?
It's just an example of something that's very different from Fuji. I mean, it could easily be Canon as well.
We all know it's Nikon.
Yeah. We do all know it's Nikon. And I mean, I guess the problem though is like any of those systems also have their own sort of like travel camera type things. But I could see where the GFX 100 RF, I think that's what they're going to call it, has the film simulations, it's medium format, like it's sufficiently different from any of those systems.
But also, like if it's priced the same as a ZV-E1 and you're making me switch to Sony anyways, why would I not just buy a ZV-E1?
Well, or with Sony, honestly, I think the A7CR is a pretty strong competition.
Actually, yeah, it really, really is.
Yeah.
Maybe you should buy an A7CR.
Well, like that's kind of when I was saying I wasn't sure like about the S9.
That 45 millimeter lens will fit on it.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at is that I wish I knew what my future was on, camera systems because it'd be nice to have something where you could share lenses between them. But
you were going to buy a C80 and
yeah.
Canon
doesn't really make anything like that.
No, they don't.
That's one slot that Canon doesn't really have in their lineup. It's like a really compact full frame camera.
Nope.
Interesting.
It is. Okay, Daniel, I'm sufficiently warmed up. You can go ahead and play the intro.
Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Lucas.
And we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video.
Whenever I was in college, I bought a camcorder. And it was, I'm going to say I didn't have a real camera before that. I had like a little Batman camera that was like 0.3 megapixels.
That doesn't count.
And
that's like a toy.
I think that's basically it. And I wanted a video camera to shoot video. And so I did so much research on camcorders. And this was like before anyway. I didn't know anything about cameras for years after this still. Mm-hmm. But I did a bunch of research to like find the right thing. I'm convinced that I bought the wrong camera at the time. And I look back on it, like shouldn't have bought that camera. But I can get into it. Maybe we will. I don't know.
I'd like to get into it, but continue.
So I bought a camcorder because I wanted a video camera. And I feel like everyone's kind of had those camcorders. And what I'm getting at here is that's the last time I researched camcorders. And that was a while ago.
Yeah.
It was like over 10 years ago. Was it over 10 years ago?
Quite a bit more than that.
No. Oh, well.
Probably about 15 years ago.
Shut up, Daniel.
At least 15 years ago.
No, stop it. Don't date me. It was
18 years ago?
It was more than 10 years ago.
Uh-huh.
That's all I'm going to say. You were there,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's the last time I've really researched camcorders. And this is our long-awaited camcorder episode, as you can tell by the giant pre-roll before it, and then how much additional stuff I stacked on top of it because how much I don't want to talk about camcorders, apparently. Even though I'm so pumped to talk about camcorders, I don't want to talk about them. Because you go to research camcorders, and it feels like the most just wasteland forgotten market.
It does, and it feels like it's like a minefield where there's all these like kind of scammy, misleading products in it, and things from weird brands, and then like some of the brands we know, like Sony and Panasonic, make them, but it just feels like you can't understand the specs in the same way that you can understand mirrorless camera specs, and it just seems like it's hard to pick something and really know what you're getting.
Two things, I guess. One, the word you're looking for is scamera.
That's a good word.
And then I was looking. What was I looking for? Anyways, there's an article on Petapixel from whenever ago where it was kind of talking about market share and that sort of stuff. And if you look at the graph of where the camera, like the consumer camera market was in like 2012, 2014, it's like this huge peak. And then the market just completely crashed.
Yeah. No, sorry. Is this all cameras or is this camcorders?
All cameras, like mirrorless or OB DSLR at the time, compact cameras, camcorders, all that stuff. The consumer level camera is not professional. And by professional, I mean like movie cameras. Regardless, it's like I knew that the market had tapered, and it feels like, especially since like we're kind of in the camera world right now, it feels like a lot of it's coming back. A lot of the like researchers of point and shoots, it seems like people are kind of seeing where the limits are on their smartphone and when they might want to actually buy a camera. Canon's had a really good year last year, and they're seeing growth. They're seeing growth in their point and shoot market, and as far as like their earnings from 2024 and all this stuff. And it's like, oh wow, like camera market feels like it's strong, and like people are making new stuff, and it's all there, and like companies are investing, and Nikon's making new things. And you look at the chart and you're like, well, this is like an eighth of where it was 10 years ago. Yeah. And I can never really internalize that until I looked at that graph. And it seems to me like one of the lines that has suffered the most, suffered a lot out of that tank of the market is camcorders. Yeah. Because your phone can do basically most of what anyone would want out of recording video.
I mean, that's got to be why the market has dropped so much from the 2012, 2014 time. It's clearly not that people are taking fewer photos or fewer videos. Like, I think, if anything, that's only increased lately. But, I mean, clearly the thing that has happened is now most people's phones take videos and pictures that are good enough for what they need.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, well, where does the camcorder fit in? Because if you want something that can compete with a phone, like, you have to have enough processing to be able to do all the fancy pants stuff that the phone's doing. And then now you're getting into a camcorder that probably costs $1,000
at least.
And I think that people are hard pressed to spend that much on a camcorder.
Yeah.
When what they mostly want out of it is 20, 30x zoom.
Yeah, I think that's actually, nowadays, I think that's the main draw to a camcorder. I mean, I think there are maybe some others that we could talk about, but I mean, the one that I most immediately think of is having a powered like 20 or 30 times zoom, which is like legitimately a useful feature. Like if you're trying to film your kids play or something, like you need zoom. So it kind of makes sense for that.
It does kind of, but like that market is so small.
Yeah, it is.
And I don't know. So some of the issues that I had with my camcorder, I had another topic before this, Jane. I just want to go ahead and say that I listened to episode 14, just as like a kind of, dog food in the podcast a little bit. Yeah. And we had talked about your broken Lightroom workflow.
Yeah. Let's come back. Let's not.
And so I'm gonna put that to next week, just as like a teaser here, and letting you know that I'm moving this out of the show notes.
Give me some time to mentally prepare myself for that.
Yeah, that I'm gonna rip you apart for your workflow having not changed at all in the last 2 years.
Fine.
So just FYI. Anyways,
thank you for that.
Yeah. Just moving on. When I was looking at the things that I didn't like about my JVC Evo blue camcorder, it wasn't an Evo blue, it was just blue, but it was called the Evo. You can look them up. I don't know if you'll find them. Blue Evo JVC. There it is. It recorded it in like an MV4 codec or
It was some weird container or something, right?
Yeah, it was some weird container, and like this is like video has gotten so easy now. It's like, here is an H.264 codec in an MP4 container. Boom, there's your video. Here's H.265 in an MOV container.
Yep.
Easy peasy. And video codecs have gotten good and compressed. But whenever you go back to like mid-2000s and you're dealing with like AVCHD, where everything's in folders and the container's basically an exploded file structure, it's like, where's the video? And everyone was doing something different. And JVC was doing these whatever MKV something like video containers, and I could pull them onto my computer and I could change the file extension to MP4 and see them, but it didn't, like, it shot in 4x3, it shot in SD, and it would shoot basically 4x3, but it also had a 16:9 mode. But whenever you shot in the 16:9 mode, it was essentially like stretching across the pixels. The pixels weren't being used in a one-to-one manner in order to get like the full width of the sensor. Mm-hmm. And so if you just change the file extension, the computer would play the video back in one-to-one for the pixels and would reverse anamorphic squeeze the footage.
That's weird.
And so everything would get squished and tall, even though I wanted to shoot in 16:9 because the flip-out screen was 16:9. And I wanted to shoot in 16:9 SDI, and so that's all my videos are like that. But everything that's in like an MKV container, you can't, like, it's just a mess. Yeah. I have now like retroactively gone back to all that footage and have converted it into MOV H.264, and so now it all plays back just fine. But at the time, it's like I didn't have the software to convert it. I didn't want to have to convert all of my videos every single time, and that was like just dealing with the files was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably still one of the big problems with these cameras is you buy a camcorder, like what do you do with the footage? How do you get it onto your phone?
Yeah. I mean, how to get it on your phone specifically is what people want, right?
Well, because I'm thinking about the market for a camcorder, and it's not like you or me. Like, oh man, I really like to shoot video. I'm not gonna go buy a camcorder to shoot video, which is maybe that's a weird thing to say now. It's for the people who don't have a computer.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to like copy it to your phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like, what are you doing once you take that footage? And I think for a lot of people, since cameras have been in use, since video cameras have been in use, a lot of that stuff, like they film it and then they never look at it again. Like I always think that when I see people at the zoo, like filming the giraffes, mm-hmm. I'm like, when are you going to watch that? What's the scenario where you're all going to like sit around in the living room watching the giraffes? Like it's not going to happen.
That's one of the reasons why I've converted to taking less video on trips.
Yeah.
I always wish I took more because I want to do like a super cut of my trip or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I see the photos 10, 15 times more often than I see the videos from my trips.
So like that's one thing, and that's, us that really care about this stuff. And yeah, I think for the average person, it's like, what do you do with it? And one of the things people are going to want to do is, well, I want to be able to share this on Instagram, or at the very least, I want this in my, iPhone, photo library or whatever. And so, yeah, getting it on their phone is definitely more important than some workflow where you're having to like copy it to the computer and, mm-hmm. Who knows what.
Which is why it feels like the phone is pretty much always going to win unless you need the range.
Yeah. I mean, what else do camcorders have going for them, though? I mean, I feel like you get the form factor. I think it's, maybe like more comfortable to film with a camcorder.
Yeah, I do think they've gotten that right. It's more similar to almost like a box camera. Just how you would hold a camcorder can be more comfortable to shoot, mm-hmm. and versus like a standard mirrorless. It makes it a little more easy to just kind of have it with you.
Yeah,
I remember we had a tape camcorder when I was a kid. I think we only had one, or we may have had two, and that one had an IR mode so you could shoot in the dark.
Yeah. So mine does that too. I have I think it's made by JVC actually, and mine uses Mini DV, which is a tape format. And by the way, the fun thing about tape is that like this was a quote unquote digital camcorder in the sense that it has a FireWire port on the side, and so you can plug it into a computer to transfer the footage. But when you transfer footage off a tape, you have to like play the tape to get the footage off. And so, it takes a long time. It takes about as long as it took to film.
There's ways to do it where you can do it back at like 1 or 2x depending upon the camera. But it's a whole thing.
It's slow compared to modern stuff. But yeah, it had the same thing where it had the IR mode and, you could somewhat shoot in the dark.
That's what's missing in modern mirrorless cameras that comes with camcorders. I just don't understand why I can't shoot in infrared mode.
It'd be pretty cool.
It would be pretty cool.
Yep.
Even if you could just take pictures in infrared mode. Mm-hmm. Hey, come on.
And I mean, some people modify cameras to do that. Like you can take out the IR filter on a lot of cameras.
That's true.
So it is possible, but it's like a one-way thing.
It's a one-time thing. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to get a little bit more into kind of what the market looks like now and maybe like what peak camcorder was. Mm-hmm. But part of the reason that I wanted to bring this up, one was that Panasonic released 2 brand new camcorders at the end of last year. And I was like, oh, let me check these puppies out. They're terrible. Just spoiler alert. Awful. They're not awful. I'm sorry. But we had a question that came from someone that we know that was along the lines of, my kid wants a camera to shoot video for sports that's not his phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was like high school student doing something with like, I don't know if it's like the yearbook club or whatever the modern equivalent of that would be at a school, but basically like doing some sort of like sanctioned by the school, like wanting to film like the Friday night football games and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that was a hard question to answer because if it's like a high schooler and you're a parent and you're like, you're going to buy your kid an R5 or like even like an S5 Mark II. You're going to buy them like a $2,000 mirrorless camera.
Well, because that's just the body. And then you'd also need lenses. And especially for something like sports, you're not going to get away with like a, 24 millimeter lens. Like you're going to probably need like the equivalent of a 70 to 200. And that starts adding up quick.
And it's tough because the phones have gotten so good that in order to beat the phone, you need to be in like some sort of big sensor camera situation. But like there's that middle market of like I have a flip phone and I have a camcorder, and the camcorder was maybe $600, but the video quality is way better, and I can get a bunch of zoom. Like that market is kind of like fallen off.
Yeah.
And for someone who's like wanting to get into actually like doing video and like making video products and editing and all that sort of stuff, I personally wouldn't recommend a camcorder to them because they're going to hit the limits of what that camcorder can do very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And
you kind of top out.
Yeah. And so it's like, what do you recommend for that person?
And I do think this is one case where, a lot of times when people say, what do you get? Like, I want to start a YouTube channel. What camera should I get? My answer to that is always going to be your phone.
Yeah.
Like start with your phone, use your phone. But this is one of the few situations where I don't think I could recommend that. And it's not just for the lens, like the telephoto aspect, but I feel like when you're doing like paid work or not paid work, but just something where you're like, you are at the event to shoot video or to shoot photos, I feel like using your phone kind of comes across as very like unserious.
Yeah.
Like
you want to have like the look of someone who's like, I'm producing a thing.
Yeah. Like I thought about like when you and I first started volunteering shooting events, imagine what it would have been like if we've been like, oh yeah, I've got my phone, I'm ready. Like it just, people would feel like, I don't, what are you doing, man?
If I had one of those like super sick cages, maybe it'd be
you
different.
could make it look that way,
Yeah.
maybe. But I don't know. It's just, I think there are times when you need a dedicated camera just to look the part, as silly as that sounds.
And be like, oh, hold on, let me grab my lens. And you put like a moment lens on your phone. I like to shoot anamorphic. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say than that.
Well, where we ended up landing on this is this specific person is like, you ended up selling them an old Micro Four Third camera and a lens, and that's kind of where I would also land on this topic when someone's asking is, okay, you can probably find a GH4 or something, or I don't know, like a GX85 or some sort of Micro Four Third or APS-C, maybe like an A61 6400 or something for less than $1,000.
Yeah.
And then just buy them a lens, some zoom lens that costs less than that. Yeah, you're going to be in for $1,200, but that's kind of going to be the minimum price for getting better quality than your phone, I would think.
Well, and
especially if you need like the zoom range.
What's good about that is then you have an upgrade path too, because you can always just buy better lenses.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a better camera that uses your existing Micro Four Thirds lenses. Like the problem with a camcorder is you buy this all-in-one thing, which is nice in some ways that you're not having to like build up a system. But once you buy it, like that's all it's ever going to be able to do. You can't add a new lens. Like if you want to get a different system, you're gonna have to sell that camcorder and get something else.
You can get a new Blackmagic Pocket 4K for $995. Do you think you could get like a used one for pretty cheap?
I don't know.
That would be a horrible idea.
It depends on what you're doing.
They'd have so many batteries.
Yeah. I don't think I would recommend that for most people. It probably doesn't shoot H.264.
No, it doesn't.
So,
but then they learn how to work with RAW real quick.
Man, then we get back into your file problem you were talking about earlier.
Anyway, so it's interesting though. It's like maybe the answer to that was a camcorder 10 years ago.
I think it would have been. Yeah. I mean, back in the day, that would have been the answer for sure.
I think that camcorders peaked with the Sony NEX VG900, which was a full frame E-mount camera.
We've talked about that one before.
We have talked about that one before, so I'm not gonna like dig too much into it. But it was like an A7 I sensor or something like that.
Well, but that's an interesting idea because it deals with one of the major problems, which is the not being able to upgrade the lens.
Yeah, I mean this one you just slap your E-mount lenses on it.
The downside though is that with it being a full frame camera, you can't get that 20 or 30x zoom, right?
No, not really.
Because that's why one of the reasons, like I don't know which way this goes, like which one caused the other, but the small sensors on camcorders sort of enable the huge zoom range. Because if you think about full frame, like a 70 to 200, I don't know what that is in multiples of magnification, but it's lower than 30 times. I mean, and if you imagine trying to get a lens that could do 30 times magnification on full frame, it would be enormous and enormously expensive.
I mean, it would be like technically a 2.5x.
Yeah.
Because it's not really that much.
Yeah.
But it's all telephoto. Yeah, that wouldn't be the right solution. And I think that, that camera line died out immediately because, one, the bottom fell out of the market. But two, most people just use you're not going to use that for photos, and having a hybrid camera turned out to be a better solution for most people.
Yeah.
And so in the current era, there are a ton of these like 8K 20x zoom cameras that you can buy, and they'll call you can go on Amazon, search for 8K camcorder, and you will find plenty of them for less than $100.
Mm-hmm.
And those are what I would consider a scamera.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They essentially take, they shoot video. Like, it's not wrong. They mostly shoot 8K, but it's like most of the time these cameras have really bad processors, and it's essentially a security camera type sensor, like a super tiny sensor, and they'll shoot 8K at like 15 frames per second with the worst rolling shot. It's basically unusable. Mm-hmm. And you can mostly end up shooting them at like 4K 30, and the footage is like okay. You have maybe 6 to 8 stops of dynamic range, and it's all just soft and mush. And they technically work, but they're so much worse than your phone.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that even if it has a zoom range, you're better off using your phone and cropping in. Like, the footage is probably gonna look better.
Yeah, for sure. And so as far as what's good? Like, what can I buy that's a camcorder that is, top end? And Panasonic made one that came out in 2022, which was the HCX2. And this was like the equivalent of 24 millimeters on the wide end, and it had like a 20x zoom. So it was like 24 to 200 full frame equivalent. But in traditional camcorder fashion, it's just like a 1-inch sensor. So it's like a 1-inch 15 megapixel sensor.
Yeah.
It could shoot in Vlog. Like, you had the 20x zoom. It actually has a glass lens. It's got IBIS built in.
That thing is huge.
I think I said S-Log, but Vlog has XLR inputs. You can do like live stream support. It's a legit camera, shoots video. It just has like a tiny broadcast size sensor, but it costs $3,000.
Honestly, this camera is, with the battery and stuff, this camera is 5.5 pounds.
Yeah, it's enormous. It's getting into the range of like, when I think of like news broadcast cameras.
I was going to say, I think that what you see this is almost a different category of thing. Like, we're kind of talking about like what I would call like a dad cam.
Yeah.
But what this feels more like, I have a church service. I have a, event for my community organization, whatever. I want to film it.
You stream your HOA of thing.
Yeah, we stream it, or we just want to record it, and we're going to, we have a budget to buy a camera to put on a tripod. Like, that's what I feel like something like this is for. And at that point, the $3,000 price, like, it's expensive, but it's probably within budget if this is like a one-time purchase. Yeah. It comes with the lens, like, it's a zoom lens, so you can, frame appropriately and stuff. Like, I think this is a different use case than people that are buying something to shoot their kids play.
Yeah, it's so funny to me that it feels like camcorders, whenever you graduate them all the way up, they turn into like broadcast cameras. Mm-hmm. And then if you graduate mirrorless cameras up, they turn into cinema cameras.
It kind of does feel that way.
Because, I mean, if I had a budget of $3,000, I mean, I know that like for some use case, this camera makes sense. A 1-inch sensor, 50 megapixel with like a built-in zoom. It's got all the stuff. You just buy it and you're done. That makes sense for some applications. If I had a $3,000 budget, I could buy, I don't know, like an A6700 and a lens and get way better footage.
Yeah.
I could buy like an XT4 and like be able to shoot an F-Log. An FX3 is $1,500.
Yeah.
There's so many cameras that you could buy that are all those APS-C cameras have bigger sensors.
Yeah.
And lower noise performance. They have log profile like this. I guess this has feed log, so that's not fair. But you could get like way better footage out of so many cheaper options than this. But also, it would solve the same problem. You would have to hack together a solution in order to do the streaming your church event or something.
Well, and like you might have said FX3. I think you meant FX30.
I did. Thank you.
Is around? I think it's like 1,800 right now, something like that. But then you're still having to buy a lens. And how are you going to get something that has the same range as what this has? I guess you get like a super zoom.
Get the FX30 and the Tamron 18-300.
Yeah, I guess so. And it does just feel like, depending on what you're doing, the $3,000 camcorder could be the better call. Well, which is a weird thing to say, but like for everything we do, it would not be the better call.
Actually, I think because that would be E-mount Tamron 18-300, and I think it would technically be faster than this. $579 for the 18-300. Yeah, you buy that and an FX30. It's cheaper and has a lot more zoom.
Yeah, interesting.
Done. I've solved it. Get this thing out of here.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, so like that's kind of like the top end. But if we're talking about like the dad cam situation, you're trying to find a camera. I like looked at what does Sony make, what does Panasonic make, and like we'll talk about the two new ones that they put together. But I grabbed a few of them. There's like a bunch of Z90 series cameras that they make. They make like a Z90 and Sony. Sony makes a Z90 and like a Z90V.
Yeah,
and these are also like $2,800 cameras. They can shoot 10-bit. They can shoot 420 or whatever. But they are 1-inch sensors. They max out at 4K 30.
Pretty big too.
Like you can shoot, they're big. You can shoot like 1080, 120. But even still, these are all like $1,000 cameras. They do make a cheap one. Like you can get a Sony CX405, which is still multiple years old at this point, and it's like $230. But it only shoots HD.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at this like this Sony Z90V. And it's $2,800, and it does have some pretty interesting features that you wouldn't get, like on a comparable mirrorless camera. So, for one thing, it has a clamp for like a shotgun mic, and it looks like it probably has like a XLR audio interface on it. And so I could see where you're trying to get like really good video on a mirrorless camera. That's a $400 add-on. You get that, so that's kind of cool. This one actually has a 3G SDI output. Yeah. And apparently it can live stream over 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. I don't know how that works. I don't know what that's doing. But again, it just feels like these are not the same category as kind of what we were talking about.
Yeah, and I think that like the reason that I listed these specifically is more just kind of to underline the point that we already talked about, which was what is peak camcorder right now? Like, what is the best of the best that you can buy, and how does it, like, if camcorders are purely video cameras, why aren't they better video cameras than mirrorless cameras? And these, like the Z90V, which came out, is the newest version, came out in 2017. You can still buy it today, even though it's 5, 6, 7 years old.
Yep.
And it's worse than like an A7 IV.
In most ways, yeah. I mean, having an SDI output is, that's notable.
Sure.
Built-in ND, also notable.
Yeah, like there's things that you get, but the image quality out of this is just not going to compare.
Yeah.
But like in classic Sony fashion, they just still sell it.
Yeah.
And so it kind of, leaning away from those, maybe we can talk a little bit about what Panasonic released like recently. So what is like the most, if you're looking in the $1,000 price point or less for your play or your football game or soccer game or whatever.
Yeah.
Or football game if you're not American. Ha ha ha. I could have just said football game one time. That would have been fine. Just cut that out. Anyways, They released the HC VX3, Panasonic did, and the HC V900. These came out like very late last year. And whenever they came out, I was like, man, we do need to talk about camcorders at some point. I'll put this on the schedule for months from now because no one's going to care. Just kidding. Everyone cares. And both of these cameras are 1/2.5-inch sensors. So just small. What's the iPhone? The iPhone is like, or like the current, like best iPhone you can get is like 1/2.1 or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So it's like barely bigger than a phone sensor. This 1/2.5-inch sensor is like a 5x crop if you're trying to like make a full frame equivalent of it.
Actually, the iPhone 16 has a 1/1.5-inch sensor.
So it's smaller than a phone sensor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By quite a bit.
By quite a bit. That's crazy. That's not crazy. It's crazy. So this thing is doing it's like a 5x crop. It's a tiny little sensor. It has an f1.8 zoom lens on it, which is like, wow, that's really cool. It's the equivalent of f10.8.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the 1.8 sounds good, but it's really not. Like it's good in the same way that phone sensors will say, or, phone cameras will say, this is an f2 sensor or an f2 lens. And like, well, cool, but your sensor's so small that doesn't mean much.
This has always been the problem for me with camcorders is the sensor is small. And so you have limited dynamic range and noise performance. And then you can only put so fast of glass on it that you basically have to shoot with a light or outside in order to get any sort of real image quality.
Yep.
And like that's still the case in 2025. Like you use these cameras outside or with a light. Otherwise they're not going to look great.
Yeah.
This does have like 5-axis image stabilization. They got like a windshield on the microphone. I mean, you can do, I forget what it's like, a 24 times zoom or something like that. Mm-hmm. So like it's got the zoom range. It was great for like you can shoot with it outside, has USB-C, like it's fine, but it caps out at like 4K 24. And you can probably shoot maybe 1080 60 or something like that.
And that's the VX3. The V900 I don't think is even 4K. It just says full HD.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's the top end, and then they have one that's just like worse.
Yeah,
that costs $700. And like these are the brand new versions of these cameras. This is like the best Panasonic can do right now in camcorder technology. And I look at this and I'm like, if I went out and sure it'd be more money, but say I bought the new like S25 Ultra, which is like, sure, it's a $1,400 phone, but also like it's your phone as well as your video camera. That thing will shoot. Like it'll shoot 10x zoom on it, like optically, and then you can like do the digital zoom enhance and stuff. It's going to have a bigger sensor than this. You can now shoot in log on that phone. It's going to be better than this camcorder, and it feels like camcorders have gotten completely squeezed out of the market because their video, like it's like this is a video camera, but nothing about them is better than your phone or your mirrorless camera.
Yeah, looking at looking at both of these, the zoom range, it looks like the full frame equivalent ends up somewhere like, let's say 600 to 700. So
oh dang,
when I 600 700 millimeter full frame equivalent,
that's actually like way more than
it's a lot,
like an S20 something.
But if you think about like okay, this is a $700 to $900 purchase. I mean, I just can't help but think, what if instead you got, a used GH4 or GH5, and then I guess you would need something like a 300 millimeter lens on micro four thirds to match, which I don't know if that exists. I assume that exists.
It does.
And so that, whatever the cost of that setup is, the image quality would be so much better because micro four thirds is over a 1-inch sensor. So it's a much larger sensor. Your aperture is almost certainly going to be better than what you're getting with this.
But you're just going to get priced out. Like there's no way that you can buy a 300 millimeter equivalent lens.
So if you need that extreme zoom, if you need that full length of the zoom, then sure, this is probably going to be better. But if you can get by with anything less, like if you could get by with
it's going to be cheaper.
What's going to be cheaper?
This.
Yeah.
No, maybe not better.
Yeah. But if you can get by with less zoom, like go for the like a used micro four thirds setup. It's just gonna be better.
Yeah. It's tough. So I guess maybe it seems like that's kind of the only market left for camcorders is somebody who actually needs 20x zoom. But however, my JVC camcorder had 30x zoom, and now I'm trying to think of like what the wide end was. If I flipped that puppy around and I held it out, it would be probably 23 millimeters when I think about the field of view, as far as like what field of view looks like at arm
That's
length
what
for me.
These new ones, that's about what they are. It's like a 25 millimeter wide angle.
And it was a 30x zoom. I still have this camera. Anything past like 10x zoom, you just like, you might as well have a tripod. Like it's unusable.
Now, granted, these newer ones do have IBIS.
True.
So, and OIS, it looks like as well.
Do we know if this is a 24 optical, or is it, because sometimes they crop?
It does say 24 optical.
Well, sick.
Yeah. So, I mean, assuming that, and Panasonic knows how to do some IBIS.
Yeah, especially with their small sensors.
So it probably is better than what you had.
Do you think that maybe this is a good vibe cam?
I think it could fit certain uses of a vibe cam, but I don't think that most people that are shooting vibe cam stuff really want like a lot of zoom.
There is a YouTuber that I follow or used to follow, and I can't remember what her name is or what she does, except for she does videos. Atola Visuals, maybe?
Yeah. Yep.
And there she had a video like last year or something where she was like, I shoot on this camcorder that's from like 2005 because of the vibes.
Yeah. So I guess some people use it.
And I don't know. I mean, it seems like if you want vibes, you have to go with an old camera because that also gives you street cred.
So do you think there's a scenario where this upcoming Japan trip, the only camera you take is a camcorder?
Hard no.
Why not?
Why not? Because I'm not going to be shooting at whatever the equivalent of 600 millimeters the entire time outside in bright daylight. That's like the only place this excels.
I still kind of think there is a spot for cameras like this. It's just a very small niche. I think that, like I said, it's like a dad cam. If you want something to film at your kids' Little League games or film like the school musical that your kid is in, I think you'd be hard pressed to find something that fits that particular use case better than these, because it's this little self-contained thing. You're not having to deal with like some massive lens and like a camera system. It's easy to hold, and like it's like a single purchase and it does everything you need. And like, I can see why somebody would buy that. I think you and I have a hard time visualizing that because we think of everything else we want to do with a camera, and like all the interviewing and shooting events and stuff like that. And so for us, it's like, this is this single use camera that, why would you buy that instead of buying something that's more flexible? But I think for some of these people, they're not thinking about an upgrade path. They want to like buy this thing one time. They're going to use it for the next 8 years, and it's just a simpler solution.
I mean, based on the selling practices of Sony, we know for a fact that that'll be the best thing that you can buy for 8 years if you buy the newest one.
Yeah, exactly.
Burn. Do you think that there's less stigma around using a camcorder versus a phone? I mean, I think maybe like coming down to how you grew up, I would assume that most kids these days are used to seeing like a phone in their face rather than a camcorder in their face. But to an extent, you think someone holding a camcorder, it's more socially acceptable, that it's like, oh, they're not streaming this to social media right now. They're just kind of like shooting video and it's fine. And I know that it's a home video because it's not a mirrorless camera and it's not a phone.
Yeah, I think it could be. I mean, just like we were saying earlier, for one thing, I think people think you're more serious if you have like a real camera rather than your phone. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that the fact that it's small, like it reminds me of how at events, you go like a baseball game or something, they won't let you take in like a big DSLR, type
no
thing.
Interchangeable lens.
Yeah. And so I wonder if you can take a camcorder in because it's not interchangeable lens.
It was like that at F1. You could bring in like your point and shoot camera that's got like 30 zoom on it, 30x zoom, but you can't bring in a mirrorless.
Yeah. So it does that's kind of an interesting social aspect. I'm glad you brought that up. Like that you can it communicates like a certain intent that you would not communicate with either a phone or with some massive camera setup.
I want to ask, what would make camcorders like interesting to you? What are things that they could do that would make them appealing? But I want to preface it by discussing the Panasonic HCWX F1, which came out, I don't know, probably a handful of years ago, maybe 2020, 2019.
I saw that you put this on here.
And this bad boy has 2 cameras on it. One of them is on, like, you have a traditional camcorder, maybe it's got a viewfinder in the back, you flip the screen out. Mm-hmm. On the edge of the screen, there is another camera. You can flip that bad boy towards you, do picture-in-picture on your video so that you can be in the video that you're shooting.
Get reaction shots. Mm-hmm. You're at the zoo, you're filming that giraffe, you're getting the reaction shot of you seeing the giraffe.
I'm just saying, this is amazing, and like, I don't know how many cameras are doing that.
I think it's great. I think if you're going to have a niche camera like this, add weird features like that. Like, that's super cool.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm into it.
What are other weird features that you would want to see in a camcorder that would make camcorder more appealing?
And this isn't a weird feature, but honestly, what camcorders actually need to succeed is the ability to upload to Instagram or something directly from the camcorder. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what's missing. If they added that, I think people would be into it.
For sure.
I mean, I feel that way about cameras in general anyway. Like, we've gotten to this point, with technology, it's like, just make it run Android, or whatever. Like put all that stuff in there so that I can take my pictures and immediately upload them to social media. That's what people want.
That's exactly what I was going to say. There was the Galaxy camera at one point, and then there's that Carl Zeiss camera. I'm just trying to search Android camera. Carl Zeiss ZX1, which was like a point and shoot camera that had Android on it. And like it basically had Lightroom built in.
Yeah.
And that would make these really interesting. Is like, let it run, let it be a phone, let it run Android, let it be able to do things like, I downloaded a new camera app, like what's that one that makes everything look terrible? Starts with an H, maybe Histo something, hypo hipper hopadooboo. I haven't installed on my phone. It's the hipster one.
I can't remember what it's called.
No good, Daniel.
Yeah.
Jeez. You know what? This is the last episode of the show. We're done. just cancel it.
Can't handle it.
Cancel it.
No, but
you could install alternate cameras that like on your camera to like run the product. Why not?
Interesting.
And upload it.
Like, I want to get this into my video backup workflow or whatever. Like, why can't I just as soon as my camera is on Wi-Fi, why can't it just upload all the footage? Why do I have to, plug it in or whatever? Like, that's what they could add that would make these things compelling.
What's that? Is it CapCut or something? What's that? The TikTok?
I think CapCut might have gotten banned. I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, well, I think it did. But like, if you could run that software on your camcorder, I mean, I think, and like still get 30x zoom, like, that would be cool. Wasn't there a camera that was announced at NAB last year or something where it was this like box camera or something that only shot vertical and it could like upload directly to TikTok or something?
That sounds familiar. I don't remember what it was called, but that does sound familiar.
I'm just saying, things like that could make camcorders interesting.
Yeah.
If you were able to just put it in Dropbox or whatever so that you can have it as soon as possible on your phone.
Yeah.
And go from there. I don't know. What other things do you think would make camcorders interesting to you?
That's a good question.
For me, I always liked the flip format, and I know that that's basically a phone at this point, but the ones that made like weird swirling stuff where it's like the lens is over here and they kind of like broke in half and flipped around. I like those fun form factors, and I think that the mirrorless form factor is very well established. The cinema camera form factor is pretty much established. I want camcorders to be weird.
Yeah. Well, they already do kind of have a different form factor than those other things you described. I mean, I think they're closest to a cinema camera, but I would say there's a difference in that it's meant to be small and handheld. But I like that a lot of them have like that wrist strap type setup, and I mean, they're very comfortable to hold and film with. And I think that to succeed, they need to be different. Like, they need to not be exactly like a mirrorless camera. Even the flip format, I thought flip cameras were great when they came out, and I wonder if that's really what you would have been better off with whenever you bought your camcorder.
Yeah, I would have.
Flip. But I think that has been thoroughly killed by phones because it's the same as a phone basically in form factor and like trade-offs.
I was on the precipice of the conversion to flash when I bought that camera. So I bought a hard drive camera with a 30 gig hard drive, and that was limiting in both speed and durability. I mean, it still works fine now.
Yeah,
but
because back then it was like a spinning disc hard drive.
yeah,
right?
yeah, it's got a spinning disc 30 gig hard drive in it, like an iPod.
Yeah.
And like if I was going to buy an 8 gig flash card to put in a camera, I think it would have been so expensive. And so it's I purposely didn't buy a flash camera because of that, because I wanted the storage space, and that was the wrong decision because it was the most non-forward thinking decision. If I had bought a flash memory version, like the flash just got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and faster and faster, and most flash cameras at the time could shoot 1080p. And not getting a 1080p or 1080i video camera, not getting flash were the wrong decisions for me at the time.
Yeah. Well, now you know.
Now I know.
I got that. I had that Kodak ZI-8, which was a Kodak branded competitor to Flip.
That thing had better video quality than my JVC.
Yeah, yeah. You actually used it a couple of years ago, right? You filmed a YouTube video.
Is that still at my house, or did I give it back to you?
I think I have it now.
Okay.
Because you filmed a video and you used the JVC and the ZI-8. And I got the ZI-8 at the time because I think that the Flip cameras at the time, I want to say it was like they could only do 1080 and the ZI-8 could do, or sorry, the Flips could only do like 800 by 600 and the ZI-8 could do 1080. It was something like that. There was some reason that I got it, and preferred that. But, it was a good camera. And like that one did have flash memory. It shot onto SD cards. It was the form factor of a phone. What was interesting though is that you held it vertically, but it shot horizontally.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of in the days before mobile video, so people still cared about horizontal video, but you could hold it comfortably.
Those were the days, Daniel.
It was I don't know. I think I have some nostalgia for that time in cameras because it was just
because everyone knew that horizontal video was the right way to do things.
Yes,
that's what it is for me.
It was neat that you could get something that was like pretty small and that you could hold in your hand, but still shot video that was like of the quality that people would accept. I think it was neat.
Well, yeah, I mean, it shot like you had at the time. I think you had an iPhone 1 or iPhone 3G.
Yeah,
and it shot way better video than that. I don't even think did the iPhone shoot video.
Not at the iPhone 1 did not, which I didn't have that one. The iPhone 3G.
You didn't have the first iPhone?
No. I don't even know if the 3G shot video.
I don't think it did.
I don't think it did either. I think the 4 may have been the first one.
I think that's right.
So, yeah. I was going to say another thing that would make camcorders interesting is if they, kind of, what was that Instax camera that had all the physical effects?
Yeah, it's I forget which exactly. It was one of like the Evos or whatever that came out recently.
Like it'd be cool.
There's a new one of those that released. It's the exact same thing, but you can print with it and shoot digitally.
Nice. It'd be cool though if camcorders had like, I'm thinking like how you have built-in NDs, you rotate the little deal and like you get more and more ND, but like if that was like different visual effects, you could get like a, like a bloom filter or whatever else, just like switch between some things or have like drop-in filters or something, just like really lean into the vibe cam.
To me, I agree. Like that's kind of what I think would make camcorders interesting is don't let them just be kind of dumb video cameras. Like give them a Wi-Fi chip, put Android on them and then let the software be a little weird.
That's what would be exciting about it. Like, I mean, we've been wondering, I think, why mirrorless cameras, like, you buy like an S5 Mark II or a Fuji X-H2S or whatever. Like, why can't I do more on this thing? Why is it like this amazing feature that they're adding frame.io support? Like, these should be table stakes. But if they're not going to get to that point yet because, it's a professional camera or whatever, fine. Camcorders should be that. Like, they should be a combination of a phone and a camera where you're getting like all the latest technical features and, being able to upload to social media, being able to sync to Dropbox or whatever, being able to do like video editing on the device, but then still having like better video chops than something like a phone.
Yeah, I'm of two minds about that whole concept. I like that mirrorless cameras as they are not smartphones and are not running some common OS. Like, because then you'll get into a situation where just like you look at the Android phone market, it was really interesting at the beginning because like everyone was doing something kind of different, but now basically every Android phone's the same phone.
Yeah, it's converged.
And that's what I like in the camera market, that we have so many competitors that are, I mean, even like, I don't know, I was going to list them. I'm not going to list them. But there's like multiple different brands that are all doing kind of their own thing and competing against each other, pushing this market forward. There's not a ton of consolidation like there is in the Mac versus PC or Android versus iPhone. It's Canon versus Sony versus Nikon versus Fuji. It's like all this stuff. And I think a lot of it comes down to their products are, you can buy an old camera and it's not like, shoot, they didn't update the OS in 3 years, and so it's basically unusable. It's gotten slow.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about like, this camera is not getting security updates anymore, so you basically just need to get rid of it. Or, oh no, this one doesn't support Instagram anymore. Like those are just not concerns.
They exist in time, and you can pick up an XT2 and it will be as good as it was when it released, and the software is not getting old and whatever. And I think there's a lot of value in that we get by not having these things like run Android.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's room for, on the consumer level, like down where it's not like professional level gear, having the ability to like maybe have something that does have those features.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's maybe room in the market for both. I just fear the day that like you go to buy your Canon R1 and it runs like Lollipop or something.
Yeah, well,
that'd be a really old version of Android.
It may happen, and there are some things about that would be nice, like being able to automatically sync your stuff without having this weird like phone connection thing with your camera.
Yeah,
like some of that would be pretty good, but I just mostly think it would set camcorders apart from the current mirrorless market if they did some things like that.
Yeah, I think it would be great for camcorders. I just don't want it in. I don't want it in my mirrorless cameras.
Yeah.
Whenever we were talking for a few seconds about your original iPhone, and made me think about your friend who bought that iPad at Best Buy and licked it and got on the local news.
Yep. People just don't like technology as much as they used to, I guess.
I guess not.
It's all gotten a little less exciting.
And that's the problem with camcorders.
That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us, and if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter at CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.